Thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell you a little bit about possibilities for patenting and drug repurposing. We are a Dutch patent trademark and IP firm, also active in Belgium. We are also very active in pharma and have a lot of experience in possibilities to provide patenting for drug repurposing. So let me try to explain a little bit about the options you can think of. Please go to the next slide, please. So it seems that what are typical distinguishing properties you can use for a known compound? So we are talking about known compounds. So the compound itself is not novel, but what can we do? For instance, if there's a new combination of two known compounds, there is an opportunity. And what's very interesting, especially when you have a certain synergistic effect of these two compounds, which provide more than the normal additive effect. Second thing is that combinations of two known compounds can have, for instance, less side effects. For instance, maybe you can use at a lower dose. And the third additional effect, which you can look for, is any other beneficial effects over the prior art you can think of. The second option is that you use the same compound, but then in a new formulation. And this new formulation, besides being novel, you also look for a certain benefit. So, for instance, improving patient compliance or reducing side effects, or different dosage frequency, or different route of administration. And also improving pharmacokinetics and bioavailability are effects where you're looking for when you develop a new formulation of a new compound. And also in any improvements in the way you can prepare this formulation, although that can be less of an input. Now, to go a little bit deeper into, let's say, claiming these use of these known substances. So the substance X itself is known, but then, for instance, if you have a different disease or different indication, there is an option to claim use of the same substance X for use in the treatment of a disease I. For instance, Viagra is a very known case that it was originally developed for a different indication, and it was very definitely found that it was also usable for the different indications. So that's an example where you find by incident that the same substance can be used for treatment of a different disease, and this in general you can claim as long as this treatment for the different disease is not novel, and is not known. The second one, which is even more interesting, and it's maybe in line with, let's say, precision medicine, is that you find that the use of the substance X, that you define a different patient group, or you define more exact patient group, which is more susceptible, for instance, for this treatment. So you have high efficacy, or you have lower side effects, or well, any beneficial effects you can see. And even though, for instance, the treatment of a certain disease itself would be known, finding and showing that the specific patient group has a higher benefit of the same use of the same substance in itself is patentable. So that's very interesting, and it's also done very often. A third option is that you find that using a different way of administration, so dosing or frequency or administration route, provides benefits. And also that is a kind of sub-indication and is as such patentable. The fourth one is any combination, so combinations with a second substance or a second composition, and that can be in, let's say, combination therapy at the same time, but that can also be at different moments, but at least it's in combination in therapy. And the following one is a different symptom or clinical endpoint that is going into really, let's say, the more detailed sub-indication, and it is used especially for further protection of a known substance, but then you really have to dig into the details to show that any of those symptoms or clinical endpoints were not known or not obvious upfront. Last one is that you look at different disease endotype or subtype. So even if you have a general disease indication, you can even claim specific subtypes of that. Now, so just some examples of how we can claim, well, provide medical use claims. We have, for instance, in Europe, you see here claim 1, a therapeutic combination of a first therapeutic composition comprising a certain active API, and a second therapeutic composition also comprising another API. So the second therapeutic composition is different from the first therapeutic composition. And because this combination was not known, so it's novel, you can even claim it as, in general, as a medicament. So we call it first medical indication. That means that you can claim it for any disease. So it covers any disease. But for instance, if the combination was somehow known for a certain disease or for medicament in general, or therapy in general, that's the second example. You could claim here a combination of an irreversible inhibitor of BTK and an anti-cancer drug. Maybe you have to define even a specific anti-cancer drug to make it novel. Can happen that anti-cancer drug, of course, it's very broadly defined. But then at the moment that this combination is novel, you can claim it for the use and treatment of a certain disease, and at least when that is novel, you can get protection for that. So here you see the first one is a first medical use, very general. The second one is a specific disease indication. Let's go to the next one. Now another example, and that's a US style example. So the wording is different because now you word it as a active method for treating. That's the way it's worded for US. So it's treating a patient with cancer, and this example we show that also patient stratification and also combining a diagnostic step and using that for patient stratification can be used to distinguish it from what is known. So for instance, you see that first you determine using a test sample of a patient whether it comprises mutation in gene 1. It's an example. You could also word it in a different way, but here the specific is that you use a test sample to determine that, and then in case this mutation is detected, then you decide to administer an effective amount of drug X. So even, let's say, drug X would be known, even it would be known, let's say, for the treatment of cancer, you would expect that, yeah, okay, then this would not be possible. But even because you now do actively monitoring of a certain mutation, and due to this detection, you decide to use this drug, even that as a sub-indication is possible to get protection for. So that's also very interesting. Now, okay, in general, let's say, what is the general principle of medical use invention? It's the development of new therapeutic use or indications for a known compound or drug. So And it does not really matter what's the status of the drug or whether it has been approved or not. Of course, for let's say for business development, it would be very interesting to look at generic drugs because they are already on the market, they are already approved. But for let's say the option to claim medical use invention, it's not related to any approval. And it can relate, so the medical use invention can relate to truly different indications, truly different diseases, but it can also relate, and that's very interesting as well, to, let's say, a different regime, a different patient subpopulation, even a subtype of a disease. So also there you have options to get new patent protection. And in general, most jurisdictions this is possible, but there are some differences in the possibilities to get protection for medical use claims. So in general, we see three, let's say, groups. We see that in US, you can claim the method itself, so the activity of treating. So that's allowed. In a lot of other countries, the format which is allowed, it's the what we call a product for use of, so it's medical use of the product itself. There you see Europe, China, Korea, Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Brazil. So a lot of countries or areas where you can get protection for any new medical use. There are a few countries where you don't have possibilities to protect new medical use inventions, like India or Argentina. And in that case, you look for different ways. For instance, you look for different formulations, compositions. But even there, for instance, a new combination could optionally be possible to protect. But then you don't limit it to a specific, let's say, use of medical indication. But at least then, if the combination itself is novel, then even in India or Argentina, you could get protection for that as well. Okay, thanks. Now, how is novelty assessed for medical use or for combinations or for medical formulations? There are some clear differences also for the different jurisdictions, how to distinguish. In general, different disease is a very proper way of getting a novelty or distinguishing feature. In a lot of jurisdictions, you can use the patient subgroup or patient stratification. You can use a different regimen. You can use the combination of known drug compounds. And some, but maybe less often, you can use also different symptoms, different endpoint, or different disease endotype or subtype. Now, in general, the novelty for US is in the treatment itself, and also for other jurisdictions, it's the treatment features, which is part of the product claim. And there are some jurisdictions where only the different disease can be used, so for China and Brazil. So sub-indications, for instance, are not a way to get something novel in China and Brazil. So please go to the next slide. So besides novelty, the second hurdle you have to show is any inventive step, and that means any advantageous effect of your new medical use or formulation of combination. And very relevant here is that upon filing, you need to provide some evidence for this advantage. That can be an increased effect or less side effects, or well, any advantage you want to show. But in general, you need to provide some kind of data, and it's stated here, some kind of experimental data. I know that also You can have a look or whether in silico data can be used. I would not completely exclude it. So in case you're very early stage and you're still looking for let's say the right indication and so on, and the right lead compound and the use of that, then even in silico data is sometimes used as a kind of support for the effect. But that's something you always have to be carefully evaluating together with your patent experts. But at the moment, for instance, for an NCE, in general, in vitro test data normally suffices. And for medical use inventions, yeah, you also have to look what kind of in vitro data would, let's say, have a good indication of being usable for a specific medical indication, or the patient stratification. For instance, for a patient stratification, you would need some kind of data would at least make it credible that this patient subgroup would have more benefit or would have benefits from the use of this known compound. So that in general, I would advise that you have at least some kind of experimental data at the moment you want to file the patent application. So what's always a dilemma in this regard is that, of course, at the moment you start or want to start clinical trial, you need to, you need to draft any plan or any protocol, what you want to do. And because you need some kind of patient data as support, or at least some data which is close to patient data, then at the moment that this clinical trial protocols is going to be published, and even lately, because of some updates of the regulation, there are some more strict rules, or let's say the more demand for publishing or early publishing of these protocols. You need to be careful at what point you are considering filing a patent, because at the moment this protocol is published, it can also be used, or it is available, and it can also become prior art, so it destroys the novelty, possibly, of the invention. So what we always advise is that the moment you are preparing this document, you would like to use that already for your patent applications and put it in there as well. And this way you provide, or you prevent that your own clinical trial protocol will be hurting the possibility you will have to get patent protection for your new, well, your new medical indication or your subtype indication. So that's something to take care of. Now, this is a very short, let's say, I would say very simplified overview of any points you have to consider when you consider, is it possible to get patent protection for my new medical indication? So the first question, is there a new disease indication? Yes. Then please review that further together with your patent expert. Is there a new dose regimen? And of course, a lower dose is often very beneficial in terms of lower side effects, but even another, well, moment of dosing, or it can be also be a possibility to get protection for. Then the third one, is there any new drug combination? The fourth one, is there any patient stratification subgroup? And another one is, do you think of using any diagnostic in combination with the use of your drug? And do you use that actively in the therapy? Then also it's an interesting starting point to discuss that. So I don't think this is a conclusive overview, but it gives at least some major criteria to think of. So in general, takeaways is that the drug repurposing research, although the drug itself is already known, it can result still in very effective IP protection. And yeah, I think that can be very important for any investment you need for getting the drug repurposing through the clinical trials and to the market. This area is always evolving in countries, and we are following it up day to day. So yeah, but at the moment there's a lot of opportunities, and I think there will stay a lot of opportunities to protect these kind of medical use indications, and yeah, really involve your patent expert, let's say, early in the process before starting to publish any papers on it, so that you will find the right timing to file any patent for your new medical indication. So that's in general what I would like to tell about this.
Great, thank you.